President Trump, along with the First Lady Melania Trump, spent the day with our troops after a surprise visit to Iraq.
The near elimination of the ISIS territorial caliphate. Today, they're not so dominant anymore. Great job.
To have the President of the United States visit them is a very big deal.
Today, both sides of the aisle will meet face-to-face for the very first time, Heather, since the government shut down some 6 days ago. President Trump is insisting he'll do whatever it takes to get his border wall.
You have to have a wall. You have to have protection.
We'll talk about a comeback. The markets roared back with another record day, the Dow posting its best day in nearly a decade. The Dow closed up 1,086 points.
You are the sentinels who watch over our nation.
This is a Fox News alert. The President and First Lady make a post-Christmas visit to troops in Iraq and Germany, where troops give a thunderous reception as the President thanks the men and women, heroes and leaders on the front lines fighting ISIS. Welcome back.
Welcome to Fox and Friends on this Thursday morning.
Thursday morning.
Thursday. That's Marine One landing in Washington, D.C. as the President comes home from visiting the troops.
Landing on the south lawn of the White House, of course, after the President was overseas.
That's exactly right, yeah. We will, when he leaves the plane, or the helicopter, it's not a plane, he'll talk to reporters. If he does, we'll bring that to you as soon as it happens. A big trip, whirlwind.
A long journey. The President left Christmas night on Air Force One and made his way all the way over to Al Anbar province, the heart of where ISIS has been driven from, where the fight continues today to root out terrorists. This is Marine One. Now you've seen the President has landed at Joint Base Andrews and flown the short 20-minute or so trip here, and you see him just moments ago. You're looking at tape as he gets waves and should be getting out soon. We'll find out. He's certainly got to be a little bit jet-lagged and tired for that sort of trip, a trip that many were saying that he wouldn't make, criticize him for not making, yet he did it.
Yep.
And as you know full well, Pete Hegseth, how important a trip like that is to troops.
Yeah, you know, the President tweeted, "Poor me, I'm at the White House alone." Turns out he wasn't. He was headed
on a plane.
But it is a big morale boost for the troops, no doubt. And you can't manufacture the enthusiasm that we saw from some of these videos.
Yeah.
From the troops reacting to this President. And we're going to get into that a little bit later on in the show, the way some in the mainstream, so-called mainstream media want to react to that. But at the end of the day, the troops are enthusiastic to hear from their commander-in-chief. They feel like it means that he is behind them all the way. Even as we have a national debate and conversation, Katie, about what our troops should be doing in Iraq, what our troops should be doing in Syria, they still appreciate that they have a commander-in-chief who's got their back and believes in them.
Yeah, a huge morale boost for not just the troops in Iraq, but also the Iraqi government as well, and the State Department officials who are on the ground there still doing the work. We are seeing President Trump walk off of Marine One right now. This happened just a couple of minutes ago at the White House. First Lady Melania Trump is right behind him. They've been gone from Washington, D.C. for about 24 hours, a little over 24 hours. They had a quick trip to Iraq and Germany, and as we saw with the photos that they were taking, President Trump was taking selfies with a number of the troops. Melania Trump was there as well. He gave a speech yesterday to the troops and talked about their fight with ISIS, saying that we are not going to be pulling out of Iraq. He defended his decision to pull troops out of Syria and reiterated that if ISIS decides to try and gain a foothold in that country again, we will use Iraq as a launching pad to go after them. So the First Lady and President Trump walking into the White House just a couple of minutes ago from their whirlwind trip overseas.
They're home. Whirlwind is a great way to put it. You know, efficient is another way. Now, when he walked in, in business terms, right?
Yes.
When he walked in, though, you can't, as I said, Griff, you can't manufacture how the troops react. This is the troops reacting to their commander-in-chief walking in. Watch.
Airman First Class Caitlin Molina, 20 of the 721st Aerial Port Squadron RAM Services, had this to say: "I'm just at a loss for words right now. Truly amazing. I even took a selfie with Melania as she touched me on my arm. I told her it was an honor, and it truly is." That one of the several hundred members of our armed forces that was there and saying to Stars and Stripes what it meant to him. And it wasn't just a morale boost, Pete. As you know, this is the commander-in-chief, and he is getting an assessment of the conditions on the ground from the leaders there that are still engaged in this fight some 15 years later in that Anbar province.
Yeah, it's really important. I mean, he's made some big decisions recently. He's been criticized for them. Iraq, Syria, what do we do? What's the future in both places? To hear from commanders will either validate that or cause him to question. It seems it has validated it. And the troops themselves, 17 years into what happened on 9/11, still have this sense that we've accomplished a lot, but what are we doing? There seems like some drift. And they see this commander-in-chief that walks in and says, "Listen, I've got your back. I'm going to make some tough calls. It's not all going to be easy. We crushed ISIS," which you have to remember they were, and he talked, well, let's go to that. This is President Trump yesterday at Al-Assad Air Base, where I've been in Iraq, talking about ISIS. Listen.
The courageous men and women at Al-Assad Air Base are on the leading edge of our fight to vanquish America's terrorist enemies. 2 years ago, when I became president, they were a very dominant group. They were very dominant. Today, they're not so dominant anymore. We'll be watching them very, very closely, the remnants of ISIS. Some people say, well, maybe somebody comes from the area and they hit us on our homeland. If that happens, they will suffer consequences over here like nobody has ever suffered before. No enemy on earth can match the awesome strength of American soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines. Nobody's even close.
Nobody even close. I got a text, guys, yesterday as this story was breaking from one of the commanders I was with in Anbar in 2007. He said it's so important for the troops to see the support physically and to hear that what they are doing is important for the country and that their sacrifices are appreciated. Yesterday, a very well-known Delta Force commander, General Jerry Boykin, had this to say.
Do anything but pump them up. I mean, to have the President of the United States visit them is a very big deal, and the timing couldn't be better in terms of the President being able to get his message out on what his intentions are with regards to Syria. But I think this is nothing but a positive for the President, even though I don't personally agree with his decision on Syria.
But of course, after criticizing the president for allegedly not going to Iraq to visit the troops, they were very upset yesterday when troops brought President Trump MAGA hats to sign. Let's listen to what they said.
We saw the president signing a campaign hat, a red hat, his Make America Great Again hat. Does this run the risk of the president, facing some accusations that he's turning some of this into a campaign stop?
The question is, if they brought them or if the president brought them, what commander allowed that to really happen? Because this is very much against military policy and regulation.
Every time he's around military audiences, he tends to politicize it, and he brings in complaints and grievances from outside the realm of military policy.
The president seems to have confused in some way this troop visit with a campaign rally by raising things like the border wall and things that he's done for them.
Oh boy. Okay, so here's a headline from.
Where do you want to start? First of all, aren't U.S. troops American citizens?
Last time I checked.
Right.
Last time
vote,
I checked.
right?
Yes.
Okay.
This is a headline from a network that starts with C and ends with N. It says troops bringing Trump hats to sign may violate a military rule. Now let me tell you this. I've been deployed. There it is right there. There's a headline. You can ship whatever you want to yourself or have one ship it to you, and you're allowed to have political beliefs. You just can't shove them on someone else. I've had a political debate with Democrats overseas in front of my platoon.
Yeah.
Like, you can have these conversations. So, and there was speculation that, the Trump folks brought hats and they handed them to the crowd.
No, they had them there. They were already there.
Nope, they had them because there's a lot of guys in the military who are like, maybe we should put America first. Maybe that's good. Maybe I can have a flag. It is so insane that these networks find a reason to nitpick this president in every way while he's overseas with the troops. man, if I was deployed, I'd probably have a MAGA hat. And if the president showed up, you better sign it.
And let's not lose context of the timing of the visit, Thanksgiving, Christmas. You know,
Yes.
I went back in, I believe it was 2004, on a USO tour, covered it. It was Gary Sinise's first trip overseas, and it is a different time, and it is a joyous time. And so if you brought your hat, whatever, it isn't as if it was a dress,
political
full military dress guy at a campaign-sanctioned event. In fact, if you read one of the articles, it says it was not a campaign rally, but it was great the president visited the troops at a time like this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, while President Trump was overseas, there was a lot happening here. So over to Jillian for some headlines.
Good morning.
Good morning to you. Let's get you caught up, starting with the Fox News alert right now. And a massive manhunt is underway for this man you're about to see, suspected of killing a police officer in Northern California. Take a good look. Newman police say Corporal Ronil Singh was shot multiple times during a traffic stop. The unidentified suspect's truck was found nearby, but he is still on the loose and considered to be armed and dangerous. Singh, originally from Fiji, was on the force for 7 years. He leaves behind a wife and 5-month-old son. A teenager plunges to her death at the iconic Horseshoe Bend overlook in Arizona. Officials believe it was an accidental fall, but an investigation is underway. The 14-year-old's body found 700 feet below the overlook, hours after her family reported her missing. They were visiting from California. Right now, the Horseshoe Bend overlook has no safety barriers. And a Fox Business alert, stock futures dropping following a record-breaking day on Wall Street. The Dow posting its biggest single-day point gain ever, surging more than 1,000 points after tanking on Christmas Eve. The S&P 500 climbing more than 5%, while Nasdaq rose by nearly 6%. That rise could be due to cheap stocks and a slow news week, but no week is really ever slow when it comes to news anymore. A live look now in Times Square, where the famous New Year's Eve ball will be installed today. Police are expecting more than 1 million people for the midnight celebration next week. The ball is 12 feet in diameter, weighs nearly 12,000 pounds, and is covered with 2,600 crystal triangles. You can watch it drop right here on New Year's Eve on the Fox News channel with some very special hosts. I see two people I know right there on that picture.
You should come join us.
They are so special.
It's so fancy. Look at that.
Back when I had a tan.
And I had glasses.
Now, you've been, now, we're not downplaying the tragedy of it, but you've been to that horseshoe at the Grand Canyon.
I have. Yeah.
There should be
near the Grand Canyon. It's south of Lake Powell.
Okay.
So it's the Colorado River that eventually gets to the Grand Canyon, but there should not be safety barriers there. It would ruin the landscape. Just stay away from the edge.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Sounds like common sense to me, Greg.
Good advice.
All right. President Trump back at the White House this morning after visiting the troops. Up next, General Anthony Tata says the president's visit sends not only a message to our troops, but also an important one to our enemies.
And one dad flies thousands of miles to spend Christmas with his flight attendant daughter. The heartwarming story from 30,000 feet now going viral. Get your tissues ready.
There is no military more capable and now more lethal, more fearless, and more skilled than the United States Armed Forces. Nobody is even close. You are the patriots who ensure the flame of liberty burns forever bright. That's who you are.
A surprise visit from the commander-in-chief, and moments ago, President Trump returning to the U.S. from his first trip to a U.S. combat zone.
Retired Army General Anthony Tata is the former deputy commander of U.S. forces in Afghanistan and author of Dark Winter. He joins us now. General, thanks for being here this morning. First of all, your reaction to the president's visit overseas?
You know, it's a 10-foot tall moment for every troop over there to have our president, who has provided huge increases in military budgets for our military, both on the home front and overseas. He's articulated a clear policy through his national security strategy, and the Trump doctrine is playing out very nicely, where we are attacking terrorism at its source, and we are fighting China and Russia in cyberspace, and we're building weapons to be able to compete against them. And he articulated the Syria strategy very well, over the horizon force from Anbar province there. And to have our beautiful First Lady attend with him, what a message that sends. She has spent so much time with our military families and spouses and children on the home front, and to have her and him go over there, it just just sends such a strong message that the Trumps love our military, support our military, and what a great time to do it.
General, in addition to the morale boost, having the commander-in-chief there getting a real-time, face-to-face assessment of the conditions on the ground after such a big move like the withdrawal in Syria, can you speak to that and what he may have gained by this trip?
Yeah, so I think it was very important for the president to go over there and articulate his strategy in Syria, mainly because, you know, you get some news over there and you know, you get a lot of CNN and, you know, other stuff. And so you get all this fake news that is spun in different ways. And for the president and first lady to go over there and articulate their messages about Syria and families, it was so important. And you know, Syria, I think, is the exact right call to get out of Syria, perhaps put some private military contractors in there, have an over-the-horizon force, and allow for investment to come in there and clean up those oil fields and put in some pipelines and stabilize that region and work a deal with the Kurds and the Turks and the Saudis. I mean, it really is a brilliant strategy if you think about it.
General, you saw the reaction from the rank and file, from the troops, as the commander-in-chief walked in. Those guys on the ground doing the heavy lifting, Iraq, Syria, elsewhere, they see these policy debates in Washington. How are they really feeling about their commander-in-chief and the future of our country?
You know, the military loves our president, and rightfully so, because our president supports the military so well. He puts his money where his mouth is, and also his doctrine of, you know, chasing terrorists where they are and not getting involved in enduring entanglements, and then competing with China and Russia are really the three fundamental tenets of the Trump doctrine, and he has adhered to that. And so anybody who's debating anything is not paying attention to what the president has been saying. He's doing exactly what he said he would do 2.5 years ago on the campaign trail, and he's executing that strategy. And this is, you know, the quintessential civilian control of the military. The president is in charge, and there's an old saying, Pete, when in charge, be in charge, and there's no question that President Trump is in charge.
That's a great point, General Tata. Thank you so much for joining us. Hearing from a commander that certainly would know.
Merry Christmas. Appreciate it.
Merry Christmas to y'all.
All right, well, Congress set to get back to work today, apparently, as the government shutdown enters day 6, but you're not even counting. Will we see more resistance and obstruction from the Democrats? Former Congressman Jason Chaffetz joins us on that.
Plus, Mayor Bill de Blasio wants to legalize pot in New York City. Now he wants to use millions in taxpayer dollars to subsidize marijuana businesses. Is that a good idea? We'll debate it. Good morning. Some quick headlines. Caught on camera, Christmas Eve fireworks fly out of control in Phoenix. You can see there people running for cover as sparks shoot towards cars and homes. Some damage was reported. Fortunately, no one was hurt. And a police officer barely escapes an oncoming train. Incredible dash cam video shows the officer swerve and slam on his brakes as a train approaches near Chicago. The train company says an electrical shortage caused the crossing gates and warning lights to stop working. Katie?
Thanks, Griff. Well, it looks like some New York taxpayer dollars are about to go up in smoke, quite literally. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio now wants the government to subsidize $10 million in an effort to help marijuana startups. But is that really a good idea? Here to debate is Democratic strategist Jonathan Harris and President and CEO of Smart Approaches to Marijuana, Kevin Sabet. Thank you both so much for being here.
Thank you.
So, Kevin, I'm going to start with you. Bill de Blasio, Mayor de Blasio, has been against the legalization of recreational marijuana. Now, all of a sudden, he wants to not only legalize it, but use taxpayer money to subsidize those who want to get into the business. Is this a good idea?
Well, obviously it's not. Look, Mayor de Blasio doesn't really want to legalize marijuana. He's being pressured to do so. So a way to save face, because he knows that, like we all do, that legalized marijuana is about one thing and one thing only. That's money for, frankly, Wall Street and Silicon Valley. It has nothing to do with social justice, because we know who's going to get rich. We know who has the capital and connections to actually set up. And that's why a Altria, Philip Morris, is buying up the whole marijuana industry. So he's saving face by saying, well, we'll throw some taxpayer dollars at least and try and like help small businesses. The reality is $10 million isn't going to help. $100 million isn't going to help. These are massive businesses taking after the death and destruction of big tobacco that lied to the American people for a century and selling these super high potent candies, cookies, gummies. Today's pot is not your Woodstock weed. I don't want to throw people in prison for pot. Let's be very clear. I'm all for social justice. I worked for the last Democratic president for 2.5 years. But the reality is we don't need to legalize and commercialize pot, give it over to big tobacco in order to achieve social justice. This is a very bad idea.
So, Jonathan, there are a number of states where marijuana is legal, recreational, and medical. What about this idea that the mayor is now saying? You can see there on the screen, California, Nevada, Arizona has medical marijuana. The yellow states are medical, and the green, I believe, are both. But what about this idea that the government now in New York City, which is strapped for cash already, wants to subsidize those who claim they want to get into the marijuana industry?
Look, I think it's very important to point out that it is partially about social justice. I mean, these are crimes that, for example, African Americans are prosecuted for 4 times as much as, their white counterparts, even though they use the drug the same. So it's important to point out that it does have that element as well. Also, they've spent, I think it's $3.6 billion on law enforcement, enforcing laws about marijuana, arresting people, pulling people over, things like that. So it's already costing taxpayers money. Like I said, to the tune of $3.6 billion. So it's just, I think, shifting the use of that money to make it so that it's more effective for these communities. And de Blasio is making a point of making it so that the people who benefit from the legalization are the communities that are impacted.
But they're never Kevin, isn't there a difference between legalizing marijuana and then going a step further and using taxpayer money to subsidize those who want to get into the industry?
Absolutely. Listen, there's a difference between an adult using a joint in the privacy of their own home and a massive industry being subsidized by government. The same number of African American men were arrested last year in Denver, Colorado, as were before legalization. Arrests aren't going down for minority communities. In fact, when we look at youth arrests, and especially in the beginning, they were going up. Now, the same number of African American and Hispanics are being arrested. This isn't about that. And again, I know that some people come into it on the social justice side, and I can understand. Yeah. But the reality is, this is about Wall Street fat cats and today's marijuana. We don't need to subsidize it. Let's subsidize schools and midnight basketball and real jobs programs, not pot.
Well, we reached out to Mayor de Blasio's office to clarify where this $10 million in taxpayer money would come from. They said a fund would be set up, and it would be from a portion of tax revenue from sales, but they're not sure if it would be collected citywide or statewide until some kind of bill or legislation is constructed. So, Jonathan Harris and Kevin Sabat, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Well, they treat some patients that need it the most, but dozens of hospitals are now facing serious questions about their safety. The troubling new report is up next. And if Democrats keep the resistance and refuse to fund the border wall, will they own the shutdown? Former Congressman Jason Chaffetz here to discuss. Up next.
I think I'll say, I don't want the wall, and then they're going to give it to me. I figured out the solution. First Lady, tell Nancy Pelosi, I don't want the wall. Oh, we want the wall. And then we get the wall. That's another way of doing it. That's another way of doing it. Now, we have to have it.
That's one approach. There you see it. The count up clock, 5 days, 6 hours, 30 minutes, and 51 seconds. Let's bring in Jason Chaffetz, Fox News contributor, former U.S. Congressman, and author of the book, The Deep State. Congressman, thanks for being here.
Well, thank you. Good morning. Happy New Year. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, all the above. So your reaction to the president being overseas with the troops, he's talking about the wall. If he didn't want it, Nancy might want it. Any movement on the shutdown?
Well, look, the Democrats previously wanted it. Then Donald Trump showed up and said, hey, I want to secure the border. But Democrats are in a precarious position. They want to abolish ICE. They've been in favor of sanctuary cities. They say they want border security but can't define it. The president wants a wall, and I think ultimately he is going to get a portion of the wall. I wish he'd do it. Remember, he's down from $25 billion down to now $5 billion. But I think the president's on the right side. And I don't think the Democrats can go into 2020 2020 taking a position on abolishing ICE, getting rid of the wall, you know, all of these things. I just don't see it. And let's try this novel idea. How about we just do what the Border Patrol agents actually want to do, because they want the wall.
That's a good point, Jason, because the president, it wasn't really covered very much in the media. We talked a little bit about it yesterday, and that is the president saying that he's actually got a contract underway building some 100 miles of Texas border wall, fence, whatever you want to call it. Nancy Pelosi now says it's bead curtains. But, you know, he's actually moving forward within the parameters that he can. The president's saying that he's going to visit later, I believe, in January to that spot where construction is going. But at the end of the day, it is clear that the president has staked out a position from which he is immovable, not on the number, but on delivering the security that those Border Patrol officials want. How long is he willing to stay?
Well, I hope the president goes to the border as soon as possible, because it's not just about a wall. What it's really about is thwarting human trafficking. It's about curbing the drug cartels. It's about slowing down this flow that's coming into this country illegally. So everything from drugs and human trafficking and all these things that we say we're against, but the Democrats are actually, if you don't want a wall, how is it that you think you're going to impede it? And if Nancy Pelosi, to listen to her, says it's immoral, does that mean that she wants to take down the existing wall? Yeah. Let's have that fight. Let's have that discussion.
Keep this government shut down until there is movement on the Democrat side.
I think the numbers, quite frankly, that are out there about how big this shutdown are very, very small. It's 75% of the government is funded through automatic programmatic spending. 75% of the discretionary budget is also funded. So you're talking about something that's very small. Have you noticed it yet? Most people haven't. Now, I feel for those federal workers, but the president's right, and he's got to hold the line, and I think he will.
Well, the wall is also about American sovereignty in addition to all of the things that you laid out. But my question is, you know, Nancy Pelosi claims that she has all this leverage because she's coming into a new Congress with a majority. She thinks she's going to win the speakership. She likely will. But does she risk going into a new Congress with this shutdown and the base of the left saying something like, look, we need you to start working on Medicare for all. We want you to do all these other issues that you're not focused on, but instead they're focused on beating Donald Trump at this $5 billion, $3 billion game when it comes to the fencing he's asking for.
Between now, Congress notoriously always gravitates to deadlines. Between now and January 3rd, she's somewhat irrelevant because you only have to get to a majority in the House, and the Republicans control it, and they pass the bill. What's frustrating to me in the Senate is that they won't vote. Put these senators actually on the record. Let's see who actually, when it comes time to actually vote against it and who votes for it. Let's see who's on which side of this fight.
You're exactly right. Force that measure. What happens, though, when Nancy Pelosi becomes Speaker? What's next?
Well, then you have the State of the Union. And I believe between the time that we have a new Speaker and the State of the Union, they do not want to sit there and listen to the president for an hour or two on a national televised audience, go out and make that discussion. I think they will strike some deal right in between then.
But you know, once Pelosi takes over, it's going to be harder to make progress. Strategy from Jason Chaffetz right now, do you put DACA on the table to sweeten it to get Democrats to move?
Well, the president's already gone way out there on this, but I think the president needs to pound on a daily basis the moral imperative to build the wall and to curb all of these negative things that are coming without a wall. And I would also just on a daily basis say, let's do what our law enforcement wants to do. Let's do what the Border Patrol wants to do, because they want the wall.
The bully pulpit, ultimately, of the State of the Union might be the biggest leverage.
Well, speaking of doing things, you recently sat down for an interview with Congressman Sam Johnson. You're going to give us a preview of that now, and then we will look at the entire thing later in the show.
Congressman Sam Johnson is an American hero. He's probably the most beloved member of Congress that nobody knows about. He's one of the longest-serving prisoner of wars in the history of our nation, nearly 7 years as a prisoner of war, and then he went into the Congress for the last few decades. Everybody in Congress loves this guy, and I hope you stay tuned because later in Fox and Friends, we're going to introduce you to somebody who's retiring in just the next few days.
Well, 8:50, we're going to bring it to you. I've met him once before. Great guy. It's
an American. There are people that are iconic, and then there are American heroes. Sam Johnson is an American hero.
Looking forward to it.
Thank you very much.
Jason Chaffetz, thank you so much. Jillian, over to you.
All right, thank you. Following a number of stories this morning. Good morning, Jason. How are you? Let's start with this. An alarming report revealing dozens of troubled psychiatric hospitals are still treating patients. The Wall Street Journal finding more than 100 fully accredited hospitals with serious safety violations that include lab lapses linked to death and abuse. That's about 16% of all accredited facilities. The issues include lapses linked to death, as I said, or abuse or assault of patients. The co-founder of LinkedIn says he was unaware that a group he helped fund was using Russian-like misinformation tactics. Reid Hoffman gave $750,000 to an anti-fake news organization. That's according to the Washington Post. That organization is accused of using social media to split conservative votes in last year's Alabama Senate race. Democrat Doug Jones beat Republican Roy Moore. And we told you about this yesterday, and now we have an update. 3 homeless men caught on camera attacking a police officer will face charges.
Get back. Get back. I don't want to hurt you. Step back. Step back. Step back.
Officer Syed Ali, an Army veteran, seen fighting off the men inside a New York City subway station after a woman reported them for harassment. Right now, 2 suspects are under arrest. The DA deciding to charge them after that video went viral. And this story is incredible. A father takes several flights on Christmas just so he could spend the holiday with his flight attendant daughter. A passenger seated next to dad Hal on Delta Airlines posted these photos online. He told USA Today Hal was also planning to fly with daughter Pierce the following day. Pierce shared the passenger's post thanking him and gate agents around the country for helping dad make every flight just so he could spend Christmas with his daughter.
Aww.
Isn't that great?
Love it.
Very sweet.
I know. Daughter stories.
Probably not the best Christmas meal he ever had, though. I'm just throwing that out there. It's debatable. Some meals on the flights.
All about the spirit of it.
It is. You're right.
Thanks.
Time well spent.
6 flights. That's love.
All right, well, Adam Klotz has your weather for the day and the rest of the week. Adam.
Hey there, guys. I know a lot of folks still traveling here as we're wrapping up the holiday week. We've got a big winter storm moving across the middle of the country, and we're going to dive right into it. If you live in the northern plains, the Dakotas, that's all areas that we're concerned. Actually, everything on the southern end of this, from Texas running up in the middle of the country, those are just heavy showers, big thunderstorms. But this is going to turn into a big storm there from Minnesota, stretching down through the Dakotas, back down towards eventually Oklahoma. These are Kansas, all areas where you're looking at blizzard and winter storm warnings. We could see as much as 6 inches of snow widespread, some spots getting up to 10 inches to 12 inches of total snow. If you're on the east side of this storm, all it's going to be is rain. This is not going to be a snow event for you, just all those areas highlighted. Back out here on the plaza, if you're married 43 years, I have a semi come by. If you're married 43 years and you bring a sign to tell me about it, you know I'm going to put you on TV. What's your guys' name?
Cheryl.
Bill. Cheryl and Bill. Congratulations. And you told me a little bit ago you're from Huntsville, Alabama, and I know what everyone in Alabama likes to say. What do you guys like to say now?
Roll Tide, roll.
Roll
Look
Tide.
out, Oklahoma, here we come.
Roll Tide, roll. Guys, back into you.
All right, Adam, thank you so much.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
Roll. All right, the media told you all of the migrants coming into our country were healthy, right? Wrong. The Department of Homeland Security sounding the alarm and asking the CDC to get involved and investigate their health. Dr. Mark Siegel on the urgent warning coming up.
It's a pretty basic question. And remember when former President Obama made a friendship bracelet for Joe Biden? Is the bromance over? Why Biden is so upset with Barack? We'll bring it to you.